One of you came up with a brilliant question about what to do when royalties that you feel are due you don't appear, or indeed you are starved of rights that you think are due you. Without knowing your case, it's impossible to answer, but I do think it offers us the opportunity to discuss how to earn money out of music, how to get paid, and what your rights are. Unusually for me, I have 6 quite concise answers, and I guess this is born of me being around the block a few times as a journeyman of a composer. So the first rule of Right Club, I'm not going to use that pun again, it sounded good in my head, but when it came out, just terrible, is hang on to your rights, and as much of your rights as humanly possible, as the absolute fundamental ambition of your ability to make money out of music. But in order to hang on to these rights, you need to understand them. So here's a crash course.
I'm going to attempt to explain this by using a Victoria sponge cake and some household objects. Now, the reason I use a Victoria sponge is it's because it's got 2 layers. Now, we imagine our earnings and our rights to be like a pie chart, but in fact, it's actually composed of 2 sets of rights. The top half is the publishing. Publishing is the notes that you've written, the stuff that hangs in the air, whether it be on your recording or a cover version someone makes or someone's performance of your music live at a stadium. These are the mechanical rights, and mechanical rights are the physical production. Now, historically, recording and producing music is an expensive business. This is why very rarely we get to hold on to much of this cake or get to see much of this action, because larger companies stump up the cash to bake this cake. Now, I've got 3 figures here, and they represent the 3 tiers, how I see it, of the music industry. The Queen represents the recording industry, so selling records, packing out stadiums, the kind of glam end. Papa and Nat West Pig, which is a kind of an in-joke for a very small demographic watching this, is commissioned music. So when you are commissioned to write music, whether it be for theatre, for television, for film. Baby Pig here is for library or production music. This is where a company commissions you to write library or production music. It then goes onto a shelf or lots of shelves all around the world, and you wait for the back end. Right, let's get the digestive done. Historically, the glamour and the money end of the business has been seen to be the recording industry. The middle ground has been the film and TV industry, particularly the film industry, I would say. And the kind of poor cousin of the industry has been library or production music, which earns a considerable amount of money, not masses less than the film and TV. What's happened over the last 20 years is the recording industry has been hit with new technology, which it hasn't really kind of tackled very well. So as a consequence, large swathes of the industry have been taken away from its pockets. But what this industry has really started doing is applying its wares for applied media, film, TV. So what that is doing is taking more of the cut here. So what are your rights? Well, they're less unfortunate than you think. The main problem is if someone is basically is giving you some biscuits to create a master recording, it's very difficult to then claim, well, that I own it. You know, you've given it to them, it's theirs. So this often comes off the table, which is why you can see the importance of publishing. But these guys understand the importance of publishing too, so will often coerce you into giving away some of your publishing rights. Now, publishing is split into 2. This side is your composer's share. The law is no one can take more than 50% of the publishing if they haven't composed it. So the only way you're going to lose any of this is by co-writing or indeed allowing someone to name themselves as a composer. And this is not unprecedented. Now, the publisher's share doesn't have to be 50%. And indeed, one of the most effective ways of maintaining as much of your publishing as possible is to sign an administration deal that basically simply takes that out of your cake. In the recording world, everything is about this bit of the cake. So you sign a record deal. The record deal is a contract that divvies up what this is worth, how much they're going to pay for it, how much they give you up front, and how much you get from this pie. You will usually then sign a publishing deal, and if you negotiate a good deal, they will only take, say, that much. And with the record companies, it tends to be between 7-15%. You can see still a huge amount of the pie is based in your publishing, although everything is going to be geared towards sales here. Now this part of the industry is very different because they're not really kind of relying on the publishing. This is a secondary kind of thing. Now, they're relying on a mechanical of sorts in the sense that your recordings appear as part of a larger thing, a film, a TV show, and what they're relying on is selling this to exhibitors, cinemas, and to broadcasters around the world. So what you will often find is this will be completely taken off the table. Conversely, the people who have paid for this will also like to get a control of your publishing. And this will mean you'll often be coerced into giving away half of that. So you can see the model for commissioned music is, well, what's the point in doing that? Well, what's very interesting is up front you get given a commission. The other thing that's crucial about this upfront thing is you don't have to recoup this in order to earn your publishing. You earn this from day one. So what about the library and production music world? Well, this is a largely speculative marketplace. The initial outlays are much smaller, so you get much smaller commissions. They spend much less on the actual mechanical recordings. And as a consequence, it's much more geared to the back end, both for them and for you. So it's a much more kind of equal partnership. And I'm not saying this is the same for all production music deals, but what tends to happen is you get half of the mechanical and half of the publishing. Often they'll ask to recoup the cash that they've spent on this before you get any of this action, but this you get from day one. So you can see this, out of all of the options, is a very favourable split. The problem with production and library music is there's a lot of it out there. So basically you're speculating on, to a large degree, getting lucky. Now, how do you get paid? Well, again, speaking from my experience of being based in the UK, you have collection agencies called PRS, or in America it's ASCAP and BMI. PRS, what they basically do is gather your income and pay it direct to you. You will also get income from your publisher, or the person who is publishing on your behalf, and you will get income from the people who have paid for the actual mechanical creation. So basically what happens is the BBC gives a large blanket to PRS every year and goes, we're going to give you this, it's millions and millions and millions of pounds. We're going to give you this huge blanket and we want you to work out how to distribute it amongst your members. And what the PRS then goes is, well, that's a big old blanket. We'd really like to know exactly how much music you've used and whose music you've used. And we really need to know every single usage of this music, certainly for BBC One and BBC Two, because this is a large part of the blanket arrangement. Now, someone like Sky, conversely, goes up to PRS and goes, we'd like to give you this. This is our blanket agreement, but it is actually a single sheet of toilet paper. And basically what we want you to do is divide it up amongst your members. And PRS goes, well, this is a single piece of toilet paper. And when you start dividing it up, it's not as substantial as the blanket. So I tell you what we need from you, Sky, is once a week, and make it a different day of the week, every week, we'd like to know what music you've used, how much you've used, and whose music you've used. And then we'll divide that up from this. So basically the idea with stuff that is non-terrestrial, not BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4, is that you need to get lucky. You have a 1 in 7 chance of getting this cut of this small piece of tissue paper.
And what of distribution? When are you due to get this stuff? Well, basically what tends to happen is every quarter they gather up all of this kind of information, and then in the following quarter or in 6 months' time they issue and prepare a distribution statement, and they whack the money in your account. Now you have to bear in mind for international that there'll be a local agency doing this, so they may have to wait 3 months to 6 months to gather the data, then it takes them 3 to 6 months to process it, then they sit on it for a little bit, earning a bit of interest, and then they send it on, at which point that falls into a distribution with your local agency, who then have to process it, etc, etc. So I always say for domestic income you need to wait at least a year to make sure you've seen everything of that performance, say it was shown on telly once, and for international you need to wait between 2 to 3 years. Certainly for stuff like library albums, I say that it takes about 3 years for you to see any meaningful earnings out of those, because the process of You know, you're releasing an album and then people, it doesn't look like I'm walking uphill, but I am, that's why I'm out of breath. The process of releasing an album and then people picking tracks from it, creating content with your tracks on, that content being TX'd, and the process I've just described starting will take up to 3 years. You have to remember, this is a volume model. I know that PRS is inundated with people calling up and going, listen, last week something of mine that I wrote with 6 other of my mates was played on Sky TV. Not only is that data not going to appear yet, but you are talking not about peanuts. You'd be lucky if you'd be able to buy a peanut with the amount that you're due.
Now, in the world of new media, there are many more of these sheets of toilet paper. So each piece of toilet paper is divided up into tiny little nubbins, little grains of income. So streaming is a complicated business that I don't particularly understand, and I don't have much action in the streaming world. Certainly something I have seen is I've done a TV series and I have no mechanical rights and I've got 50% publishing. This then appears on a VOD, so like a catch-up service. And what income does that generate? Well, it doesn't generate publishing, it generates mechanical income. And look what's happened. So I'm a bit of a snob where case concerned. I used to be a baker.
I told you I'd fail miserably. Basic thing that we're dealing with is it's just simple law of economics, that the more exposure an entity has at the front end, the more security it wants at the back end. Your mortgage lender, if you put down a 10% deposit, is going to charge you a higher rate of interest because you have less skin in the game. This is a volume model. These companies are trying to sell as many units as humanly possible, and they do this by exposing themselves to huge risks, but in the hope that they will nab a unicorn, a Beyonce, a Coldplay. And at that point, what they want is they want to have as much action in that unicorn as humanly possible. So this follows on directly to the second rule: never take more than you need at the front end because you'll suffer at the back end. Again, it's all about skin in the game. And the third, something I'm terribly guilty of, is never give without taking. The number of times I would hand away my publishing rights, I would accept a fee that was far too small and then spend that entire fee on booking an orchestra. By rights, I should own more of that copyright, but I never demand it at the other end. So don't give without taking. The fourth rule is something that I've said before: take control. The longevists in our industry are people who have finally got their head round tour budgets, who have said, hang on, why is that kind of A&R assistant flying first class with us, managing the cash flow around your business? You are a business. You may kind of sniff and laugh at my thing of do business plans, and I have friends and I can see people who are the longevists, who are people who have finally taken the reins of that business and are running it the way they feel they should run it. The fifth rule: in order to earn money out of music, you have to become a musical entrepreneur, which is easy because you are creative. Apply that creativity not just to your music, your lyrics, your stage design. Apply it to business ideas. This is not really something that's massively new. There is so much historical precedent for this throughout the history of the entertainment business. We can go all the way back to Walt Disney. What enabled him to build this empire, these theme parks? Was it making fantastic animations? No, it was toys. George Lucas, what enabled him to make the biggest independent movie of all time, Empire Strikes Back, to write Raiders of the Lost Ark? Was it because he's a great filmmaker, a great director, or even a great producer? No, it was toys. What enabled Led Zeppelin to be one of the richest bands of all time, to be able to fly around America between tour dates on what they referred to as the mothership? From what I've read, it's because they got control back of merchandising sales within the venues. Right the way along to someone like Dr. Dre, who has made a huge success as one of the most amazing producers. But the big story with Dre is headphones. It's very easy for us composers and musicians to go, well, it's not like it used to be because, all of these YouTubers and people aren't watching the telly anymore. And how is it we don't, one of my things has been viewed 40,000 times. Why don't I get like the PRS off YouTube? Well, it simply doesn't work like that. These entrepreneurs, these YouTube creators, well, yeah, they have control over the skip ad button, but they're splitting it down the middle with YouTube. And 1 million views, what do you think that earns you? Well, I would say, I believe from what I've read, between $1,000 and $3,000. I'm sure a lot of people will say, well, that Logan Paul doesn't seem to be doing too badly, and Casey Neistats of this world. Well, actually, if you look at their YouTube content, someone like Logan Paul, every 2 minutes is talking about merchandise. I think what grumpy composers and musicians are missing about social media is it enables you to directly interface with your audience, to listen to what they want, and then to give that back to them. You know, I've seen amazing up-and-coming indie artists be able to create a really dedicated following of people, to be able to work out how they can sell them hard copies, whether it be vinyl or t-shirts or mugs or tickets to shows, directly, only then to be taken over by majors and completely destroyed in the old world system. I feel so passionately about this. You know, it is just the basic overall thing is of seeing yourself as a business. And herein lies the 6th rule, which is me being real kind of daddy about things, which is, for God's sake, make hay whilst the sun shines. If you're making money out of music, you are a unicorn. There are hundreds of thousands of people who want to do this, and you've achieved it. Congratulations. But make the money whilst you can. Work hard whilst you can. And employ delayed gratification. So when that first $100,000 comes in, don't buy an Aston Martin. Bank it, pay the tax on it, and then see where you are in a couple of years' time and whether you can treat yourself to that McLaren. So that's my daddy rant kind of over. I guess in conclusion, I can't go back in time and use this hindsight, but I hope by kind of telling you about it, if you do adopt this mindset of being an entrepreneur in order to make your success, your music business, a success, then I do believe you'll be one step ahead of the competition.